A recent study by Stellenbosch University has found that 49% of teachers employed in government schools are over the age of 50. Now, this puts most of the teachers in a pool of those likely to retire from the age of 55. Well, what impact does this have on South Africa's education system as a whole? Let's speak now to the Head of Strategy and New Programs at the Gerwel Fellowship Program. Jeremy Gibbon is our guest. Jeremy, good morning to you, and thank you very much for your time. Let's begin with that impending crisis. I think that's how you are seeing this. Explain why.
Good morning, Holly. Good morning to all the viewers. I think it's hard not to see literally half of our current teacher corps in South African public schools retiring within a decade. It's hard not to see that as a massive challenge. There are different ways of looking at it. We lose our most experienced teachers. We lose many of our senior managers and our leaders. And so there's no doubt that this is going to put incredible pressure on an already constrained public schooling system. However, at Gerwel Fellowship, we really also see it, as the researchers did, as literally a once-in-a-generation opportunity. We will never again have the chance to almost refresh half of our teaching corps within the space of a decade. And so if we're looking at the quality of teachers, the initial teacher education training that they go through, the types of pedagogies, the technologies that they're trained in, never again are we going to have this chance to impact such a large percentage of the teacher corps. So I think it is a crisis, but I think it is also a very exciting opportunity.
It could be seen as an exciting opportunity, Jeremy, and I take from your words, but there has been this constant worry that the closure of training colleges, education training colleges, is what has contributed to poor outcomes when it comes to our education system. But let's focus the attention on the pool that one would think would be of upcoming professionals in the teaching profession. Are you suggesting that that pool is not of good quality to replace the ones that are about to retire?
Well, I think the quality of the pool is something that we as a country need to be deeply interested in. Certainly, I as a parent am very concerned about the teachers that teach my children. I'm very interested in who they are and what their quality is, as every parent would be across the country. I think historically, if we look back over the last little while, education degrees have had the lowest APS scores, the scores that allow people to enter into those degrees, and that's obviously a concern. If we look at the quality of mathematics scores of students who apply to become teachers, that is disproportionately low compared to other degrees, and that's obviously a concern. The work that we specifically do at Gerwel Fellowship gives us enormous hope, though. We run a program where we support students through their postgraduate certificate in education, a so-called PGCE, and we get 15,000 to 20,000 graduates a year applying for this opportunity. And as we look at the quality of those graduates, we're enormously encouraged to see how many excellent people of really high quality are looking to enter into the profession. So It's not all bad news, but I think it is a challenge.
What about life expectancy, Jeremy, which has improved? That suggests that people can still push from the age of 55 when they feel like, I'm ready to retire. They can push themselves to 65, I should think. Are you saying that the pool that's about to retire can no longer be relied upon?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting angle to view this issue, and I need to rest strongly on the researchers at RECEP at Stellenbosch University who are doing this work. What they're finding at the moment is from the age of 55, a publicly employed teacher is allowed to retire. Most retire by the age of 60, and some stay on to 65. And I think there's no doubt that challenges in public schools mean that there is pressure on older teachers to consider retirement. On the flip side, there are economic constraints, costs of living that would impact there as well. But I guess on balance, we are seeing, as predicted by the demographic research, an increase in the number of people retiring each year. And it's not only people retiring. There are also quite a large number resigning from the public school sector. So the challenge is not only at the retiring end, it's also throughout the system. And certainly there are a larger number of teachers within that 50 to 55 bracket who we see resigning, where we would hope that they would continue and certainly step into those positions of management and leadership that are so desperately needed.
Yeah, and that pushes our conversation once again, Jeremy, to look ahead to the younger pool of professionals that are going to enter the education system. What does the Department of Basic Education need to do now in order to ensure that they bring on board not just people who understand the teaching profession from the books that they read at university as they prepare for this, but teachers that are innovative in the education space, teachers that understand that they are now teaching in the digital phase, and so they've got to be au fait with incorporating technology. Is that what you think is going on right now? Is that the state of preparedness?
Yes, absolutely. That's such an important question, and one that certainly we as a fellowship grapple with. And we work very closely with provincial and national education and know that they grapple with this issue. So to give credit, VBE have looked carefully at teacher supply and used the Funzo Lushaka bursary scheme in priority subject areas to attract young graduates into the profession. And that certainly has played a role in the increased number of graduates that we see coming through. But the point you make is critical. We don't just need graduates, we need high quality graduates who have an orientation towards teaching. And unfortunately, some of the research shows us that the teachers in the profession are there not as their first choice. For many, it's a fallback. And of course, that's not what we're wanting. We're wanting highly committed, passionate young people. And in particular, we're wanting very strong subject matter experts. And that's why at the J.S. Gerwel Fellowship, we really push to bring on board graduates, BSc graduates. I want my child's maths teacher to have studied third-year maths, possibly even done an honors or a master's in maths, and then to qualify as a teacher, so that I know that the person teaching my child has got the highest level of mathematical knowledge. And so that's really important. I think another focus that certainly we have, and we're seeing many other organizations, is around what we would call modern pedagogies, really deeply understanding how young people learn, and making sure that teaching and learning activities in the classroom are appropriately designed. So the so-called pedagogy, the art and the science of teaching and learning in a way that puts the learner at the center of that experience, that these activities are designed in a way that engage young people and activate on the learning process. Yeah. You mentioned computer technologies. That's a critical part. We can't get away from the fact that our lives are increasingly digital and increasingly computer-orientated. And that's a critical part of teaching and learning. I don't think it replaces teachers. We need excellent, passionate, well-prepared teachers who can use digital pedagogies to enhance the teaching and learning environment for our students.
I'm going to conclude on this note, Jeremy, because you've raised another point now that interests me, and that is that young people who are joining the education profession, they're not joining it because they're excited to get into it, they are passionate to get into it. It's a fallback. That's the wording you have used. If it's a fallback position, then it leads us to a completely different narrative where you have people who are probably teachers themselves who are going to say, my child wanted to really get into this particular course, but because of the marks, they really didn't achieve it, and so the fallback is going to be education. So we're talking about nepotism, for example, people who are simply getting into the profession to earn some money, and so there's no passion there. What are you seeing? What evidence are you getting in relation to people who are entering the education space, not because they wanted to, but as a fallback position?
Yeah. Well, just to be clear, the research that we were quoting, there is an OECD study that was done a few years ago, which reported that less than half of our current teachers saw teaching as a first choice career, which is obviously of deep concern. In terms of teachers coming new into the profession, must admit that the work that we're doing in partner organizations that we see on the ground and schools we work with, I'm seeing a different teacher coming in. I am seeing a young, passionate teacher who is deeply aware of inequalities in the system, who has an orientation towards social justice, and is wanting to make a difference through education. Certainly the J. Gerwel fellows that we work with just display that in ways that are just incredible. Now, of course, within 28,000 young teachers starting new in our schools, you're going to get a variety of motivations. And for graduates who are unemployed, teaching is certainly an opportunity. That doesn't make them any better or worse than any other teacher, though. I think we need to acknowledge that even if your original trajectory maybe was to become an engineer and you can't find employment and you do a PGC and you end up teaching science, I've certainly worked with and seen some incredible teachers who either worked in other fields and transitioned later on into these fields. So for me, it's something that certainly can be worked with. I think that it has a lot to do with leadership within a school, the ethos that schools develop. But I have no doubt that there is a very strong, passionate young group of teachers moving in. And it's interesting to see a little bit of the research coming out that compares, for instance, content knowledge between teachers in the younger grouping, the kind of 25 to 30 grouping compared to older groupings. That's pointing to a higher content knowledge in that younger group. And for me, that's exciting. Obviously, content knowledge is not everything about being a teacher. Of course, there are many other aspects that make for a good teacher, but we certainly want to make sure that our teachers have sound content knowledge as they embark on classroom activities.
Jeremy Gibbon, let me thank you very much for your time and insight on this. He is Head of Strategy and New Programs at the J. Gerwel Fellowship Program. Thanks indeed for your time. All right.